Well, hello everybody. Hope you're all doing fantastically well. It's Connor here. We are back with another episode on One Leeds, and Nancy and Connor are back. Fantastic stuff. It's been your Friday sort of thing for quite a while, actually. We kind of did like a succession of I think it was 3 or 4 shows, and then I think we both had a break, to be honest with you, on Fridays. So here we are back again. It's great to have Nancy back on the channel. Absolutely fantastic. But guys, before we start as well, there is a competition right now to get involved in. I've mentioned this previously. We've done it with the Patreon now. Shout out to Jamie Edwards, who's just won a bit of free merchandise, but we're now doing this live on the channel. Me and Back Four are giving you guys a free bit of merch. The details are in the description below. So make sure you do that, everybody. Well worth getting involved. Free bits as well. Patreon, now live. We've got a very, very spicy Across the Pond, which is live on the network now. We also have articles across oneleeds.com as well. If you guys want to get involved in the latest press conference bits, we've got a Joe Gelhardt article going up later on as well. So it's all going on, everybody. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce for the first time in a couple of weeks, Nancy Froston. How are you doing, Nancy?
Not bad at all, thank you. Yeah, all good.
Oh, I think you've gone off. Have you gone off, or is that just me? There you are. No, I can hear you. I can hear you. You're all good. Yeah. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad at all, thank you. Yeah, all good.
Good stuff. Right, well, I guess. I mean, we've absolutely done Burnley to absolute death in terms of analysis, Nancy. But where do you see Leeds United right now? I mean, we were just speaking off air there, and it has been a quiet week in terms of Leeds, and it's quite funny, really, because that transfer period was not quiet any week, really. Well, I mean, at the start it wasn't it? It was quite funny. We were talking about it picking up, and towards the end, it got a little bit more active. But with regards to Leeds now, it still feels a little bit tumultuous. It still feels a little bit on the edge. And I think that was spiked a little bit by the Burnley result at the weekend. I mean, how do you see things at this moment in time when it comes to Leeds United, Daniel Farke, and just squad performance, I guess?
It feels very much in the balance, I think, at the moment, which is quite different from coming into the international break. After that Hull win, I thought, great, right, that's it now. They're settled. It was a good performance, a good win. And then, it's weird that one game can suddenly send things back into kind of, I wouldn't say it's a panic, but just like people, I think it's unsettled, isn't it? Like the fact that they've not started brilliantly, the sort of bit outside the playoff places. I know it's only 5 games and it, it might not count for a lot. It depends how things go. It just makes Saturday, feel like very, not must win, but like there's a pressure there, I think, and people are, if we're debating, or fans are debating the suitability of the manager at this stage of the season, it probably points to the unrest, I think.
It's interesting, isn't it? I don't know where I'd sit on it, to be honest, Nancy. It's I think from last season, I wanted to see the manager develop in terms of, these high quality, low blocks, which we saw a lot of towards the back end of last season. It felt when it was like Blackburn, Sunderland, etc., and how Leeds are able to get through that. It felt like last season were a little bit sort of one-dimensional in terms of just playing the ball to, those 2 X factor players in Rutter and Somerville, especially Somerville when it came to that attacking third. How are you looking at it right now? Because if you sort of question it, you get categorized as having a meltdown or overreacting, and I'm very much used to that over the years and years and years on YouTube. But I think it's I think it's okay to do that, to question the manager maybe at this moment in time, because that keyword development is something that we all want to see in football players, but managers as well. And obviously with Farke being so young, he has years and years to hone his craft, really. And Norwich fans I've spoken to have said that it's quite similar to what they saw at obviously their team, in terms of just him struggling against certain types of teams and playing sort of one-dimensionally through Emi Buendia, they would say. Do you think there is a sort of a plan B as such with Daniel Farke, and does he need a plan B? Do you think we should all just sort of like rest easy on just playing the Daniel Farke way for the remainder of the season, sort of thing?
Yeah, I think there's a few things at play, and I would say it's perfectly valid to be asking these questions at this point. It's not like, they're 5 from 5 wins and people are grumbling about small things, and you think, all right, come on, give it a rest. The results are there or whatever. It has been a mixed start, and I think it's okay to question those things. And I think even if they'd had this mixed start and they'd managed to hold on to those three big players in Gray, Somerville, and Rutter, I think maybe there wouldn't be that much concern. But it's all with that context of the summer sort of loaded onto it. So I must admit, I think at times, from what I saw in the period that I was covering Leeds at the end of the sort of mid-season onwards last year, I did find them a bit one-dimensional in terms of always looking to Somerville when things weren't working in terms of like a bit of creative thinking or that block, which I think, every team basically turns up to Ellen Road and does now because they've probably seen other sides have had a bit of success with it. I did find that a bit one-dimensional. I think this season it's not quite been there for me in terms of the link up. You get it in flashes. I've found they're very intense, maybe first 15, first 20 of the game. Same again after half time, but at least from how I feel the momentum of the game's been going. I do feel like they taper off a little bit, particularly again after the subs, and I feel like that was a bit of a grumble for people against Burnley, like you're chasing the game. And I think when he brought on, was it Peru and Rothwell at the same time? And they're maybe not the types of players that are gonna. I think Peru can get you a goal from a half chance or whatever, but they're not really the types of players that are going to bring a massive injection of speed or threat or whatever. So yeah, I think at times like it's not been as natural for me in terms of the creative kind of play and like the attacking play. Although there's certain players that have that within them. I guess it's the duration and the consistency over the course of the game. It feels like they smash it early doors, but then if there's not the goal there, or you miss a chance like Joseph missed, there's just that little bit of, all right, well, what do we do now? And maybe that's where your plan B. You're not going to do that in the first half, but maybe that's where your plan B needs to come into play. And I think there was a bit of tinkering with the formation against Burnley, wasn't there? It looked like he went to sort of a 4-4-2 at one point, and then 3 at the back and everything. And if you're not doing that often, it might not work. From the bits that I saw from when he went 3 at the back onwards, I don't think it did work because it didn't really weren't able to play out from there. So.
Yeah, and I know what you mean. It feels like at the minute we're sort of building up in like a 3-1-6. I think that's what we've sort of all sort of kind of agreed on really, and that's a little bit different. It feels like the attacking midfielders, Nancy, for me, are inverting a little bit, and then you're obviously getting Bogle, and you're getting Bogle and Firpo sort of trying to fly on that on the wings really and provide us with that width. And I just felt like Burnley were able to really combat that quite easily by packing out that midfield block, and it was just difficult for Leeds. It felt really, really difficult, and Burnley were almost saying, well, go on then, get out wide and cross the ball in and we'll deal with it, and that sort of led a little bit to Firpo and Bogle. It felt like cutting inside a little bit, of which that's what Burnley had planned for, and those counter-attacking phases will come in more often than not. I mean, it wasn't like Burnley did loads, was it, Nancy? It was just very much like it felt like it was 1 or 2 passes and they were in Leeds' attacking third, whereas Leeds needed about 35 passes to break down anything really.
Yeah, and obviously the goal is unfortunate because Solomon slips, and I think, does he play it through? I can't remember. The shot goes through someone's legs, doesn't it? Just before, and there's various bits there where basically on another day, those situations might not have fallen so kindly for Burnley, because I think we'd all say like Leeds had the bulk of the chances. You can see it on the, if you like looking at those game wave charts, you can absolutely see it. It's like, mostly in Leeds' kind of section of the chart, and then there's like 2 little spikes for Burnley. So, but that means nothing when the scoreline's against you, sort of thing. But yeah, it's
What are your thoughts on that, Nancy? When it comes to, obviously we saw, I think it was LUFC data, wasn't it? When it's like, if you've dominated a game, because Farke sort of talks on this, doesn't he? You'll know with his press conference as well, he'll say, we've dominated 70% of possession, we've had 17 shots, and a lot of fans sort of say the same thing, really. It's like dominant when you look at the stats, but the eye test of the game, it was very much of Leeds didn't do that much. So it was, I mean, as I say, you look at the Joseph chance, you look at the Nonto chance, but I think from that point onwards, we had like a 0.2 XG.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think, Farke's very aware guy in terms of what he's saying. Like he's always very considered and measured in what he's saying. So he's not when he comes out and says he's pleased with the game like that, he'll always sort of preface it by saying, like, I know this isn't really what fans want to hear, or it's not really like the good thing to say. But I suppose they're in a very different position to, to us as journalists, but to fans as well. When when that's your place of work, I suppose you are gonna hold on to some of the positives and think, well, it was no good, like 5 games in, absolutely blasting the
No.
players or whatever and stuff. So he will obviously have taken the positives from that. And yes, the scoreline wasn't great, but maybe on another day it's a draw, it's 1-0 to Leeds, they nick it the other way. And I guess
Has it been a good start for you, Nancy?
No, I'd say it's like a B- start.
Yeah,
If we're doing like American style grading, maybe. I think really you'd have been wanting. I mean, the Portsmouth game's just so hard to analyse because it was ridiculous, and it was great fun. It was like a great opening day. But if they'd got a win there, I think really you're looking to be like 4 wins out of 5 for me for it to be a good start. So like it's not been terrible. I think maybe the context of this is the performances as well, where they've not been sort of stellar attacking displays, or there's been moments of frustration, and you can see where things aren't quite connecting, that maybe just form a bit of the context to this not feeling as good as it could be. It's not disastrous by any means, and a win tomorrow and they could end up back in the top 3 or something daft. It's that time of season where things move around a lot, so it's okay, I think, is the thing. But okay for most Leeds fans isn't okay. So yeah, it's tricky, and I think he has a tough job. I think he's a good man for the job in terms of being a really calm character. I think you need that at a club like Leeds. You need someone who can cope with those pressures and can cope with the expectation of the club and everything, and be a bit of a calm head when everyone's going crazy online or wherever. But I do think it in a post Premier League era at Leeds, it's just a really, really hard job, because I think maybe the expectations at a different level now to before promotion under Bielsa. I think there was quite a few years where top 6 would have maybe been, been all right for a lot of people, and now quite rightly the expectation is promotion every time. So because the club's in a better place.
Well, Martin said, hi, Connor. Hi, Nancy. For me, it's not a must-win game, but I think we need to win to get back on track. I think that's sort of the perfect way to put it, Martin, to be honest. I think when it's interesting when you phrase something a must-win, because obviously it does feel very much like, when you're putting it in the title or you're mentioning it, it's slightly overreactionary. I sort of get that. But in context, Nancy, when you look at it, if they're to lose, and this, I'm not saying this would happen, but if you just frame it in this context, if they're to lose to Cardiff, who've not won a game all season, they've lost 4 in 5, the manager's on the verge of getting the sack, if you're to believe what you read, or he's under serious pressure. And with Leeds going down there, with the team that we've got, Angus Kinnear has obviously mentioned the value of the squad as well, being one of the top in the division. For me, Nancy, there's not a lot of excuses for this game. I've said it yesterday, I'm not really bothered if Cardiff sell 3,000 more tickets because Leeds are in town. It is a game of which, in that context, is a must-win. And obviously, off the back of Burnley, I think when you use that as a sort of yardstick, I think Leeds have got to be going down there and winning tomorrow.
Yeah, that's it. I totally agree. Like, I don't really enjoy using the phrase "must win" because
No, I don't.
in my head it's like it's relegation fight is must win. That's like the maybe promotion towards the end of the season. But I do agree. Like if tomorrow was against a team that's at the other end of the table, again, I think you'd have a bit. There's probably a bit of credit in the bank to not get a result. But with Cardiff playing as badly as they have done, and it does sound like another defeat might be the cause for them to get rid of their manager. Things clearly aren't going brilliantly for them, and Leeds should on any given day have the quality to beat them. And like you say, beat them well. So a nice comprehensive win, with lots of nice link up and attacking play would be great. Whether or not it'll be that easy, I don't know. I think it'll be a bit of an emotional day for people as well, with
Yeah.
the Sol Bamba sort of stuff going off before the game. They're doing a bit of a tribute to him, quite rightly. So, but yeah, they should win. And I think that'll settle things again, because it'll just remind people of the quality that's there. Where in some games, I guess, there's been a bit of a hope that a bit of quality will shine through, and for one reason or another, it hasn't, or it's just not quite paid off in the right way.
Definitely. Paul has gifted 5 memberships to anyone in the chat. Shout out to you, Paul. Well done, mate. Obviously, hit the likes up as well, guys. It's great to have Nancy back on the channel again, and it just helps with the algorithm as well. But yeah, I think that's quite right to point out. It was interesting. How did you make? Farker was saying yesterday, he was saying Cardiff are a good side. I think he mentioned Callum Robinson and how they should be in the top 10. Am I being very cynical, Nancy, and in me sort of perceiving that as him almost having like a little bit of some fans would say a ready-made excuse, or is it very much him just saying, look, give them the flowers, much like Marcelo Bielsa used to do. He used to really give each opposition, before we played them, flowers. He'd say, look, bang, 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 brilliant, this, that, and the other. They're a good side, good manager. And he'd do it all the time, but is that a bit cynical of me, being the pessimistic Leeds fan I am?
I don't know. It's an interesting one, because it's a bit like Guardiola when he starts going off. It's like, how much of that is respect and how much of it is mind games as well for the opposition. I do genuinely get the impression with Farke that it will be respect, and we ask him, or someone in the press conference will ask him every game, before every game, what do you make of the opposition? And that's just like scripted, basically. Everyone always asks that. So, he's got to have an answer, and 95% of the time he probably gives the same answer, depending on whoever's playing. And maybe if there's like a bit of a derby game or something, that he'll chuck in that there's a bit of needle to it. But no, he's an interesting guy, because I don't think he doesn't really make excuses, but then also he never really like lets loose in terms of when he's desperately unhappy or like seriously unhappy with something. He never really lets that show. It's always very measured and like in between. So it could be an excuse waiting to happen. I don't know, but I think he's self-aware enough to know that they're barring some sort of weird, 3 players get sent off situation, there probably isn't an excuse like ready for not winning tomorrow. But yeah, I don't know. It's I do think that he's probably just showing a good amount of respect to
Definitely.
Cardiff.
Yeah. In terms of tactical flexibility, Nancy, this is something that's been pointed at him a little bit. Maybe it was interesting yesterday when he was almost asked about the double pivot. I think there's been a few fans who've suggested that maybe the obviously with the double pivot there, one of the pivots is able to almost push up into a 4-1-4-1, because do Leeds really need that shape in the Championship when we have such artillery going forward? If you can mold it into a 4-1-4-1, you're going to suffocate teams maybe with a little bit more of a higher press, of which it feels like maybe it's a little bit fragmented at points. If there's another midfielder in that offensive line, they're all going to be able to press up as a unit. Sometimes I feel like that the defensive line, which includes all 7, those players can be quite isolated from the front 4 at points. Did you find it interesting that he sort of mentioned, no, that's the shape we'll go with, and following on from that, is that indicative of maybe Alai Gruev just being a constant then in that midfield due to that being the shape that he wants to create in terms of that defensive solidarity in most of these games?
Yeah, it's quite interesting to hear him say that. I mean, I don't think it'll come as a surprise to anyone having watched, Leeds under Farke for the last season and the start of this season, to see that he is quite wedded to, I think, a particular sort of setup and a particular style. And so that's fine. That's the way he wants to do things. I mean, personally, I would agree. I think you could go for, 2 slightly more attacking or kind of box to box midfielders, with someone like Ampadu sitting behind as more of a a shield to the defense. And that sort of formation would allow for Tanaka to play, and I think everyone's been quite excited from the very small bits that we've seen from him, and definitely from the clips I've watched of him playing in Germany. I know it's kind of different. Someone I spoke to sort of suggested to me that the second division in Germany is probably somewhere between the Championship and League One in terms of how you might compare the quality there, but Dusseldorf are at the top end of that. So I think it probably does point to Gruev, yeah, and you're not going to drop Ampadu, are you? So that looks like it'll be the case going forward. And Gruev's, a really, really good player, and I really rate him. I do think it possibly limits Leeds a little bit creatively and a little bit going forward. You're probably okay when Aronson's on, because he's so busy and because he'll do all that mad pressing, closing down the goalkeeper or whatever, and going beyond Joseph and all of that. He is so mobile. I think it probably just about works, but or it works well enough. But then maybe you're into the did they need another 10 discussion, because maybe bringing Peru on there, he doesn't quite do the same thing, and so then it feels a bit gappy.
Feels like he's going to start, doesn't it? I've got a feeling Ramazani's benched and Peru comes in. That's what I think happens. I've got a feeling Aronson goes out to the left and Peru comes into the 10.
Yeah, I think that's probably what's going to happen, because it doesn't sound like Solomon's going to be there, or at least he's not been spotted in the latest training clips either, has he, since yesterday? So
and Rodon as well, not training all week. It feels like that. I know he said he's ready to, he's ready to play, but if he's not featured, I know apparently he's having a late fitness test, isn't he? But I don't understand how he can start if he's not trained all week. I know.
Well, I mean, they can. I suppose he's a player with enough experience and he's a player that you would wait right until the last minute to make a decision on, because of his quality. Although I do think he's had a little bit of a mixed start to the season, but if he's carrying an injury or something, it might have been that he's already been playing through it. So, but muscle ones are interesting. It sounds like it's his glute as well. So, it can be a bit if you risk it, and then you have a bigger problem down the line.
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, so I reckon it'll be down to the wire on him. But you'd want him, I think, even if they've been working on particular things with Cardiff in mind. I think you'd want him in there, and a centre back you can probably sort of take that risk on in terms of waiting until the last minute. But yeah, it'd be interesting otherwise, kind of what he might do there.
Is that how you see it, Nancy? Do you think it'll be Perot in? I just think, even with Ramazan, obviously he didn't go off for the international break, did he? And still he only got, I think it was like 9 or 10 minutes, didn't he, the other week? And I thought, especially when you probably got some tired legs out there, Leeds off 7-13 internationals going away. I thought Ramazan had got a few more minutes, but he didn't. So you do wonder if Perot is a little bit ahead of him in the pecking order. I know they're completely different positions, but if you can facilitate Aronson out there, or let's say Nonto out there, or Solomon out there, you feel like, I don't know, in terms of pecking order, Perot is going to come ahead of Ramazani. And I guess we even saw that in the last game, didn't we? I know it's different positions, but even just minutes on the pitch, Perot getting more minutes than Ramazani.
Yeah, I know. I always think, in this situation, there's the lineup that I'd like to see and the one that pragmatically I think he's actually going to go for. And yeah, I do agree. I think he probably puts Perot higher than Ramazani in his pecking order. And I think you could sense that from the window closing. He wasn't gushing about a lot of the signings, I think, in terms of praise. He sort of said, they're interesting players and they're development players, and he did couch Ramazani and Tanaka and Schmidt in the terms of, they're going to need a little bit of time. They're sort of mid-term players in terms of when he expects them to be crucial to the team. He was, obviously more sort of positive about Solomon because he's played in the Champions League and all sorts, so that that counts for a lot. But yeah, I imagine we could see Perot in the 10, and Aronson to the left. It's a shame as well because obviously if Dan James was fit, I think again you wouldn't have this issue necessarily, would you? Because he'd start James and keep Aronson in there. But yeah, it's not my personal preference. I think give Ramazani a go, and it could be quite exciting. But let's see. He might surprise us yet. There's a few more obviously coming back in. Bamford's back, but I don't think he'll start ahead of Joseph at the moment.
Yeah, it feels like with Cardiff in particular, I think they've got 2 games now, haven't they? Of which is sort of critical we get back on the horse, Nancy. I'm sort of looking at the next 2 and seeing 6 points out of 6. That's what my expectation is, the standard for this season. If we're looking to get promoted, for me, at some point we've got, and obviously it's very, very early on, of course it is, but as I've just mentioned, I know it's early, but you don't want to you don't want to see like a Carlos Corberán side or anything like that start to really get maybe 7 to 8 points ahead. You don't want that to happen, do you?
No, that's it. And you want to start stringing those wins together because it's the draws that kill you in the Championship when you're going for promotion. I think it's, too many of those, then you kind of start slipping. But yeah, Coventry are a tricky side as well. So that would be, I mean, I enjoy them as a neutral. I think they're a great side, but they also, strike fear if they were to play your team. I always think they're well capable of nicking something. So, but yeah, I think you need to start stringing the wins together now, and it'll just settle people down. I think it'll give the players the confidence they need, and that everything you said there about the international break is so important to consider as well with Burnley, because some of them, Aronson's been miles long haul. Tanaka's been long haul.
Japan. Yeah.
This is it. And I looked at that compared to last season. Obviously, like Somerville and Rutter, who were the key players, they weren't. I mean, Rutter was sometimes going away with the under-21s for France, I think, but they weren't really going away or going far. Whereas you look at some of the key players this season, and Gruev's off with Bulgaria as well. So I think there's more key players going off on the international breaks this year than there was last year, and that speaks to the quality of the squad. But it does factor in a little bit to what's going on.
Well, we've got a Welshman down here, Nancy, and he said, "Connor, can't fault your optimism." Which those 5 words are like music to my ear because I don't get that a lot, Nancy, to be honest. But I'm going to flash that one up on purpose. But thanks, Ian. But Cardiff and Coventry, they have very good records against us. It's the superstitious Leeds fan, and it's what I've always thought that as well, Nancy. We've gone to Millwall before, and Leeds have always had a terrible record down at Millwall. But because Leeds are the big fish in this pond right now, as we should be, as Angus Kinnear has mentioned, that the value of the squad, what we've done, etc., the assets that we have, I think that's maybe why I can be hypercritical of what's going on if it doesn't go quite right. And it's not just after one result. I mean, the whole thing with what we saw against Burnley, I just feel we've seen that story happen 5 or 6 times, and plus that last season, especially towards the last 10 games. But I think it's key that we know as a fan base, Nancy, that past results against these sides mean nothing. It means absolutely nothing now. We're a new side. It's a new build, and ultimately our team is better than Cardiff's and better than Coventry's. Now, I know football doesn't work like that. It's not always played out on paper. But as I've said previously on the show, a lot of the time it is played out on paper that the team with the better side wins the football matches.
Yeah, well, that's it. And I think, there's a degree of sort of carrying that thought of past results or whatever that probably does hamper, especially teams like Leeds, at times when you think about, I feel like every club does it, but maybe because I'm in the Leeds bubble now, I see it a lot more of like, oh, this team's on a winless streak of 10 games. Well, they're playing Leeds next, so we're guaranteed to give them a win. Yeah, and it does happen. But yeah, it can sometimes be a bit of a curse. I don't even know if the players pick up on that sort of thing or if it's just like a little quirk. But and the same with the playoff curse is kind of something that no one wants to think about. But yeah, you have got to put it sort of out of your mind, and approach it as, Leeds have got a good enough squad. The clearly, based on the interview that Angus Kinnear did as well, the board believe they've got a good enough squad. And I think Farke's about there. I think he'd have still liked a bit more, but managers always want a bit more experience or a bit more depth. In believing that, it's good enough. He did say that they're probably not the big fish anymore. He said that the other day, so or it might have been before the break actually. But
I missed
either way,
what Farker said that. I missed that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure in one of the press conferences, it might have been after Hull.
I'm not sure. I agree with that.
Said he said something about like we can't think of ourselves as either the big fish or like
maybe he's talking about himself.
or yeah. He was definitely, it was after the window, so he was a bit I don't know, like he wasn't
wasn't
super
just
happy, I guess, is the he wasn't the happiest I've seen him, but he did say something along those lines, which is an interesting kind of discrepancy with what Kinnear said, but that might just be him kind of tempering expectation a little bit after deadline day, because everyone's chuffed to see 3 new faces, and obviously he knows the realities are a bit of bedding in time and everything. But
the 3 behind, I want to touch on this as well. The 3 behind Matteo Joseph right now, obviously we've got Aronson, we've got Nonto, we've got Manos Solomon, Ramazani. So the conversation, obviously Solomon's out for this one, but just in general, Nancy, a lot of fans have been suggesting that Nonto gets dropped. How I looked at it a lot of last season, and this is my comparison. I know Dan James scored a lot of goals. I know Dan James was great, but throughout the whole season, I was very much, I want to see the highest caliber quality players in and behind that striker. So I always wanted Somerville, Rutter, Nonto, even when Dan James was performing really well, because I just feel throughout a game, you're going to see more moments of quality from better technicians on the pitch. And I think Willie Gnonto is a better technician than Dan James. And that sort of followed into this season for me. So it's quite a difficult one, because I know Brendan Aronson is having an unbelievable start to the season, but still in my head, when they're all fully fit, I want to see Solomon, I want to see Nonto, and I want to see Ramazani in the 3 behind the striker, because I think they're better footballers than Brendan Aronson. I just think there's more to their game. Now that's a very, very unpopular opinion, and I feel like Aronson is sort of molded into that Dan James sort of impact last season, where I believe he's going to get a fair amount of goals. But I also think Willie Gnonto will get a lot of goals as well, and I think he'd be able to contribute a little bit more overall to the season than what Brendan Aronson would do. Is that fair? Is that crazy? Now I know you're journalists and you'll sit in the middle and say, well, it could be fair, Connor, but it might not be fair as well. What's your honest opinion on that, or do you just play the player who's in form?
No, for me, it's Nonto and 2 others.
Okay.
Any game. I think I'm going to just quickly check through my head, but I think he's the best player Leeds have got. Or he has, he's already got that quality, but he has the potential to be the main man this season. I think between him and Matteo Joseph, but, I kind of would have liked Joseph maybe to have scored another 1 by this point to kind of, I guess, assert that he's got that level in this season. But yeah, I think this, this is Nonto's moment really to step up and make his claim as the main man. Even if he doesn't, I still think he's the best, like you say, the best technician, probably the most talented player in the squad. So for me, I wouldn't be dropping him at all. And then alongside him, I do prefer Aronson, I think, in there. Obviously, I've not really seen much of Ramazani, so it's a bit hard to pass judgment on what he might do in the 10. I watched a little bit of him, some clips from him playing in Spain, and he did seem more of a winger to me. I know people have been talking about him in the 10. And then probably Solomon on the left. So but if I saw enough from Ramazani, it could change my mind. But I have been genuinely really impressed, and I know it's not the popular thing to throw too much praise on Brendan Aronson, although I think people are coming around slowly. I think he's done just about everything he could have done. He's not. I mean, if you put the miss in the last second against Portsmouth to one side, he's done just about everything you could have asked for. And it seemed to me, watching the game back against Burnley, that he created a fair bit. He put Nonto through for that chance, which I think was offside, wasn't it? And he put away, and it was him that put him through at the other end as well. So, he's doing what you want, and I suppose that's the point Kinnear made as well in terms of when they were looking at tens. Were they going to sign someone better than him? I think there's probably a case to be made that you could have signed someone that offered depth instead, rather than starting. But those would be probably my three: Solomon, Aronson, Nonto. But Nonto, absolutely nailed on for me every time.
Definitely. Finally, score prediction. What are you going to go for?
I'm going to go for 2-0 to Leeds.
2-0 to Leeds.
Yeah,
lovely stuff. Yeah. And it's I'll go for a 3-0. I'm convinced that Leeds get it done.
Like
whatever,
3.
Whatever squad comes out, it's more than good enough in my opinion. So, Nancy, thank you so much for coming on. What have you got going on this week anyway? Just a lot of Leeds United stuff, presumably.
Yeah, it will be. It's going to be a trip to Cardiff and back in one day, which is always fun.
Well, I've done that before. I did that going out to Millennium Stadium, Nancy, when we got battered by Watford 3-0, and we barely went over the halfway line. It's I don't envy. Hopefully that's not going to happen again, by the way. But it's not a nice trip, is it? It's not a nice trip to Cardiff.
It's a long way from anywhere, isn't it? I think is the but particularly from the north. So we'll be down there and back in the day. Then next week, just back on all things Leeds. Whatever's going off, there's always something, isn't there? So
2 games per week, I think, as well, isn't it? It's 2 games next week.
Starting to ramp up. So it'll be good. But plenty of talking points.
Definitely. Guys, make sure you're hitting the like button for this. Let us know what you think about the game tomorrow in the comment section below as well. We're getting Nancy on pretty much every Friday, of which she can do. She's a very busy lady. But thank you so much for joining everyone. Nancy, thank you as well. And guys, we will see you in a bit. Cheers.